Good morning, friends. Today we are starting our first writing prompt. So our focus today will be writing, but using the reading text that we've been using to help support what we're writing. So our writing prompt for this writing exercise is: imagine that you are someone who has been affected by a major disaster. Write a journal entry describing what happened and how you were helped by someone working for a government relief agency. Use a situation mentioned in Solving Problems as the basis for your narrative. So when you're given a writing prompt, and you will have several of these this year on writing assessments and throughout the weeks as we work through our units, it's very important to analyze your prompt. So analyze means to break apart, because when we start breaking apart things like we've started breaking apart and analyzing word problems, you're able to understand exactly what your purpose in writing is and the things about your writing that are important. Okay, so we have a chart here, and this chart has a purpose, and that purpose is to help us analyze this prompt. So the first things that we're going to look at together is: what text type and or genre are you being asked to write? So as you look at your prompt, the first thing we see over here is the word narrative. So our text type, and I'm just going to copy and paste. Text type is a narrative. Okay, so in a minute when we go to our planning, we're going to talk a little bit more about a narrative and what that is, so that you're clear on the kind of writing we'll do. But for now, let's just look at the prompt. The genre. Now in reading, our genre is fiction, nonfiction, and what kinds of fiction, what kinds of nonfiction. But in writing, it's what kind of narrative are you going to write? So a narrative is like a story. And so in this case, it's asking us to write a journal entry. So that is the genre of writing that we are going to be doing over the next few days, a journal entry. And that allows us to understand how we're going to set up our writing. The next part of our chart asks, what source must you use as the basis for your writing? So they're asking you to imagine that you're someone in a specific setting situation. In order to be able to act as if you're that person in that situation, we want to use some kind of text to help guide our writing. So this week, it tells us right here in the prompt, we're going to use Solving Problems. Because in that story, we read, I do not mean that. We read of several different types of problems and agencies that help those problems. What details or evidence? What details? I'm going to go up here real quick, guys, and highlight these kind of important things too. Except I'm not, because then I have to move the screen around. I don't make you guys seasick. What details or evidence from the text will you need to look for? Okay, so I'm talking about details and evidence from solving problems. Well, the specifics in this prompt say that you are someone who's been affected by a major disaster. And so you're going to be telling me what happened and how you were helped. So details from this story that we might be looking at might include different natural, that is not how we spell natural, disasters that the story mentions, or different situations. For example, the shellfish problem was not necessarily a natural disaster, but it was a situation. So that's one thing we might want to look for. We also might want to look for different levels of government that help, and different organizations that helped, like FEMA and different organizations like that. Now, once you found this information, how are you going to use these details and evidence? What are we going to do with that information in our writing? Well, we are going to use, I will use one of the disasters or situations along with government assistance to help me imagine what it would be like to experience a major disaster, so that you can accurately tell the story, because we don't want to talk about things that wouldn't really happen. And last on our chart is, what will you need to decide before you can write? So before I can write this journal, what am I going to decide? Well, I need to decide, again, which major disaster I want to experience. We don't really want to experience it, but you know what I mean. Okay, I need to decide which one am I going to talk about, because that's going to have to do with what's going to happen in the setting, what it's going to look like around me, and it's going to also determine what kind of help I need. And then I need to decide which government let's see, which level of government or program will assist me relief program, being the relief program, will assist me. And then I'm going to have to decide how they helped and what happened. How did that story end? Okay? So these are some of the things that we're going to think about today as we begin planning our story and then writing our story in small groups. So to plan our story, we're going to use this chart as well as create a graphic organizer in our text. So I am going to pull up my notebook so that you can see, and I want you to do this so you're prepared when you get to class to kind of start working it out. I have created, back up a little here, I have created a Foursquare. This is one of Ms. Corbin's and this is our favorite writing organizer, because it can be used for several different kinds of writing. So once you get comfortable using it, then you're able to use it really well on your own. And I want to address first the kind of writing we're doing. On our chart, we said that we are writing a narrative, and it needs to be written in a journal entry format. Okay, so let's talk real quick about this word narrative. What is a narrative? Well, a narrative is kind of, in basic terms, it's a story. Okay, so we can write different genres of a narrative. Any fairy tales you've read, Once Upon a Time, princess stories, anything that tells a story can be a narrative, but those are not journal entries. Those would be fairy tales or fictional writing. Not that this is not fiction, this is fiction too, right? Because it didn't actually happen, it's realistic fiction. But we're going to write a story, but we're going to write the story through the journal entry. So when I'm writing a story, it's okay to use words like I, because you're supposed to be a part of the story. It's okay to use dialogue, which is people talking. That's okay, and we always put what people say in quotation marks. It's okay to have other characters. So you're going to have people, and they can be fictional characters, because obviously, again, we're writing a journal entry, but it is a realistic fiction narrative. So we're not going to have fantasy situations in our story. In a journal entry, it looks, for my students that do reader's notebooks, it's going to look a little bit like your reader's notebook. So you're kind of writing a diary, so to speak. A journal entry is where you reflect and write about what you experience. So journal entries are good to do when you go on vacations and you want to remember your vacation, because when you get old like me, you're not going to remember all those details. Shh. It's good to write down. A lot of what we know about history is because we've found people's journals. We've been able to read them, excuse me, and learn about what's happened in our past through those journal entries, because it's a personal reflection of what's happened. So it's not going to be a once upon a time or once there was. It's going to be today I blah, 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 or today this happened. What goes in our 4 squares are those things, what we have to decide that we're going to write about. Okay, so on our chart, we have 3 things, but we're going to have a 4th thing, so I'm going to split one up. So the first thing we have to decide in our chart is going to be which disaster. Ooh, that is not how we spell disaster. Disaster. Which disaster? And guys, this is an organizer. It doesn't have to be full of real complete thoughts and sentences. We can shorten stuff, okay? It's where we take our notes. Which disaster am I going to choose? Then we had to decide which relief program will help. Okay. I might want to know, we're going to want to describe what it looks like. Why do we need help? So we're going to want to make sure that this disaster is followed by details about what has happened and like why we need help. Because we really want our readers to be able to visualize what's gone on, why we need help. Okay? And then we want to know how the relief program helped. So that's going to kind of be part of the plot of our story. So if you noticed, I don't know if you noticed, but if you look back at our organizer, we do see a lot of those W words and H words. We have what, we have why, we have how, and then these 2 blocks are going to talk more about the disaster and the relief program. So we're going to need to know some details about the disaster you had. What happens when that disaster happens? Because if you tell me that a hurricane happened, but then you give me details about an earthquake, that's not going to make sense, right? I need details about my relief program so that I know what their purpose is, what their job is, and how they're going to help. Is how this relief program helps? Does that match the natural disaster that I've picked? If not, we may need to pick a different relief program. So what disaster, which program is going to help me, what happened, and explain why you needed the help, and then how that program helped. This is going to kind of tell us the plot of our story, so to speak. This is going to give us the what happened, when they came, what they did, how they helped. So make sure you've taken these notes in your notebook, so when you get to class today, we can start talking about that and begin planning our draft for your first journal entry writing assignment. I will see you guys in just a little bit.